Hey Summoners, this is Dan, and welcome to another episode of our OP Pick or Ban. In this video, we're going to go over OP picks you need to pick or ban in patch 9.15. While there aren't too many changes happening this patch, little ones here and there are shifting the roster a bit. By the end of this video, you'll be better prepared to carry your games, or at least ban out champions who will make your climb harder. Let us know down below if you have any feedback or comments. We're always reading them. But before we get started, make sure you go to ProGuides.com if you want to see huge improvements to your rank right now. With their Pro Pass, you get exclusive Pro courses, and ProGuides.com has a feature called InstaPro, which provides unlimited 24/7 on-demand coaching from the best of the best. Over 100,000 gamers have used InstaPro today and have ranked up significantly, so don't miss out on this opportunity, guys. Rank up now using the link below. Alright, with that said, let's get started. Kicking off the top lane, we have Gangplank, followed by some familiar faces. The Saltwater Scourge is making his debut in our OP Picks series this patch. Although he didn't receive any changes this patch, he's slowly crept up on our radar. While his power level hasn't shifted, the fact that some of his best matchups are more common have caused his win rate to rise. While it may sound strange to say that he's a safe pick, many high elo players would agree that he can play through most matchups or resort to farming in bad ones. Since he possesses ranged abilities and a free cleanse, he's definitely able to at least survive under harsh circumstances, in contrast to many other melee champions. There are many hard carry champions that can match Gangplank in terms of strength right now. What makes Gangplank OP, however, is the fact that he's so reliable. Unlike champions like Yasuo or Riven, Gangplank can find ways to farm or still impact the map regardless of matchup. Since there are so few matchups that hard punish Gangplank, you can nearly always pick him with the confidence that you'll have agency in your games. In lane, make sure to abuse your Q with Grasp of the Undying to poke out enemies. When enemies try to fight you head on, hit them with barrels you set up and use your passive empowered auto attacks. In cases where this is difficult, you can instead use your barrels and Q to farm and scale up. No matter what, once you finish some items, you'll be a team fighting monster. At level 6, also make sure to look for opportunities to ult wherever your teammates are looking for plays. Our next two picks are returning from our last episode. Renekton was the most played top laner last patch. His insane popularity, high ban rate, and solid win rate are a testament to how strong of a pick he is. It's been a while, so instead of making you guys go back, we'll reiterate what makes him great. Renekton is a solid pick through the early and mid game. In the later stages of the game, he's a great split pusher that can threaten with flanks. When playing Renekton, focus on stacking up your Fury bar before long trades. Depending on your matchup, you'll need to decide between using your empowered Q or W for trades. Q will provide more sustain and let you push the wave, while W will break any shields and burst your opponents. Other things you need to make sure you do are take advantage of Spear of Shojin and also set up dives. Renekton has some of the best dive setup in the game. He has long enough range so he can look for heavy trades before crashing waves into turret. When he's in the process of diving, his point and click stun and tankiness from his ultimate and Q makes it almost impossible to outplay. Spear of Shojin's synergy with Renekton is also ridiculously strong. While active, each hit from Renekton's W will lower his cooldowns, making it easy to use Q and E several times. As a result, it's pretty much impossible to escape from Renekton if he catches you out with it. After receiving grievous wounds on his Q, players have been fast to jump onto the Kled hype train. Although professional players may not value him as much, Kled is one of those champions who's just too good in solo queue. His ultimate gives him power to initiate fights or make game-winning picks. More importantly, his 1v1 strength as well as godlike skirmishing makes him excellent at snowballing leads. As Kled, look to play aggressively and control your wave. You can do this by trading to get your opponent low and pressuring for solo kills. Don't underestimate your damage and dueling power. When dismounted, you'll likely want to continue fighting so that you can build courage and bring Skarl back. One trick you can use is fighting when your W is coming off of cooldown. With good timing, your opponent will knock you off of Skarl right as your W comes back up, so you can fit in several auto attacks immediately to quickly build courage. After 6, look for opportunities to use your ultimate. Similarly to Pantheon or Twisted Fate, you'll want to look for plays in other lanes because of the utility your ultimate provides and also because of Kled's superb dive potential. Next up, let's talk about the jungle. Our first pick for the jungle is Kha'Zix. He's received a small buff this patch on his Q, but it shouldn't be taken lightly because its damage is doubled versus isolated targets and also has a short cooldown. Any minor buff to his Q is a lot bigger than meets the eye. When playing Kha'Zix, try to maximize your farm early. Take a safer route, pathing to avoid the enemy jungler if you're afraid of an early invade. Alternatively, you can look to contest Scuttle Crab and fight your opponent if they're a weak early game jungler. Kha'Zix's damage in the early game is quite high, but unlike champions like Lee Sin and Jarvan, he might not survive long enough to maximize his damage output until later into the game. You'll thrive against low damage enemies or ones who want to scale. As the game progresses, make sure to utilize Fog of War as much as possible. It'll not only allow you to find good flank opportunities, but it'll also increase your damage output as as a result of your passive. Pick off mispositioned carries or deny vision so that you can catch enemies during their rotations. Another pick that's dominating the jungle is Karthus. He farms way too fast and reliably deals way too much damage. What makes Karthus great is his global threat by pressing R outplayed and his heavy pressure on neutral objectives. Karthus is also able to clear Dragon, Rift Herald, and Baron extremely quickly. Anytime he wins a team fight or is able to solo an objective, it'll go down in no time. It goes without saying that Karthus is one of the best skirmishers and team fighters in the game. Even after death, he's able to continue dealing damage. The current game state relies heavily on skirmishes and team fights, so that likely plays a factor in Karthus' solid win rate. Our next OP picks are Jarvan and Hecarim. Yeah, we know we mentioned them in our last video. We're not repeating ourselves to be annoying though. These two are still powerhouses who excel at skirmishing and snowballing games with picks or hard engages. Without any major nerfs, expect to continue seeing these two dominate the Rift. Let's move on to the mid lane now. Qiyana just can't be ignored any longer. As a solid flex pick, top laners should also be aware of her presence. We're putting her mid just because her matchups are better there, but do note that she can go into either solo lane. For those who want to argue that Qiyana suffers from a low win rate, remember that is not the only metric in determining a champion's strength. Ryze and Akali have had a history of receiving nerfs in spite of negative win rates. In Qiyana's case, it's more likely that people are still learning and perfecting her. What makes Qiyana OP is how much damage she deals. Some players have mentioned a bug where their screen is always gray with a death recap when they play versus one. What makes Qiyana stronger than other AD assassins is how simple it is for her to deal damage. Since her E is a targeted ability, she can simply Q immediately after using it. If used with the water elemental, she has an easy follow-up to it with a W and another Q. Although her E is being nerfed this patch so that it's flashable, this is only a situational nerf. Champions like Fizz and Aurelia have received identical changes, but still found success, so it's likely Qiyana players will adapt equally as well. Make sure to take advantage of Qiyana's early all-in power and roaming strength. These two strengths come as a pair. If you can find a good trade at level 3 or 4, your opponent will likely have to concede lane priority. Build a slow push, crash it, and roam to a side lane after picking up the river elemental. The extra movement speed will let you arrive faster and will also allow you to briefly root a target to initiate your ganks. On top of simple execution, Qiyana's ultimate is one of the best in the game. Anytime the enemy team wants to fight near Dragon or Baron, they're fighting an uphill battle. Picking Qiyana is basically an auto win in any fight near these objectives, so look to start fights around them whenever possible. Making his third appearance in this series, Vladimir is back again. He's a great champion for solo queue, period. He's quite hard to push out a lane, scales well, and is simple to execute. Backliners have difficult time dealing damage when there's a Vladimir constantly pushing for lethal threat onto them. Like Qiyana, also be aware that Vladimir flexes well into the top lane. In fact, some matchups are a lot better for him up there since he can run Klepto for free gold. If you pick Vlad mid, don't be afraid to ask your top laner for a swap if it benefits you both. Some matchups like Cassiopeia can be difficult, and you'll want to avoid playing them. Vladimir is one of the safer AP carries in the game, so don't be afraid to play in a longer lane. It's been a while since we talked about it, so let's talk about playing him a little bit as well. The most important thing as Vladimir while laning is to not be afraid of taking some damage. While his early game is weak and he's vulnerable to all-ins, you want to take short trades and then use your Q every time it's off cooldown to heal back up. After hitting 6 and building some cooldown reduction, Vladimir's kill pressure increases significantly, so you can always play for those spikes. Don't underestimate Vlad's dive potential. His pool and ultimate make him great for initiating dives, then trading tower aggro. If you can take lane priority and see low enemies in a side lane, look to roam for a dive. In the mid to late game, look to team fight every time your flash is off cooldown. You'll want to blow up squishies by using Vladimir's basic combo. Flash E, ulti, Q, E, using pool or proto belt wherever it's needed. Our third pick for mid lane is Lux. While support Lux received huge nerfs last patch, she received some compensation buffs. The biggest one was that her R's AP ratio was increased. Although we'll miss the freeload support Lux provided, her newfound strength in the mid lane comes pretty close to filling that empty void. One underrated strength of mid Lux is her ability to farm. Her E has pretty solid range, so you can use mana to farm in any matchup. Having consistent access to income is a great strength, since you'll be able to have an impact in every game. In matches where she outranges her opponents, she can instead use her E to poke her enemies. By slowly whittling them down, she can either take lane priority or instead move further up and aggressively attempt to bind her opponents. In the later stages of the game, she's basically like Morgana, except that she can instantly solo kill the enemies she catches. Lux is a spectacular pick maker. After catching an enemy in her bind, she can burst them down with her E and R, instantly creating a numbers advantage. As a relatively safe pick with potential to delete mispositioned opponents, Lux is definitely a champion that can carry games. With that said, let's take a short stroll to the bot lane. Kicking off the bot lane is Kai'Sa. If you watch your other videos, you'll know that she's the only marksman that made it into our top 10 best solo carry champions video. This is because she's not only versatile, but she also has tools for any situation. Kai'Sa's greatest weakness is her difficulty. There's a lot to learn about her, so you'll have to put the time in if you want to utilize her effectively. Currently, she's the second most popular marksman pick internationally. While her win rate is negative, it's extremely close to 50%. If a high skill cap champion sports a level of popularity and win rate like Kai'Sa's, it's a likely indicator that she's strong or OP. When playing as Kai'Sa, you need to be flexible in your playstyle. Some matchups will require you to go for short, bursty trades with Q, while others will require you to play extremely aggressively to activate your passive execute. Think carefully or use prior experience to determine how you should play your lane. Regardless, your goal is to scale and hit your item power spikes. Kai'Sa is extremely mobile and deals insane damage in the late game. Make sure you maximize your damage output through survival or taking out enemy threats. You'll need to position carefully, holding your stealth for secondary threats and using your ultimate to either dodge primary threats or close the gap on priority targets. Up next is Jinx. She's back again, and there aren't any nerfs in sight. We mentioned her in our last episode, so you can check that out to learn more. But to summarize, she's one of the best hyper carries in the game, and can play passively or aggressively to match her support. As a result of this, she's extremely strong when she gets rolling, but suffers from inconsistency. Our final bot lane pick is Xayah. While she's arguably OP solo, she's inarguably one of the best marksmen right now when paired with Rakan. Her safety, utility, and high damage output make her a threat that can't be ignored in any game. Essence Reaver received a minor buff some patches back, so it's no surprise that Xayah found a little bit of extra strength from that. Having some CDR allows her to deal more damage, lock down her opponents more often, and also avoid death with her ultimate more frequently. Due to her wave clear and utility, she's able to play through any matchup as well. There's always room to outplay your opponents with good feather placement and understanding when you can look to extend trades. Add Rakan into this mix, and you have a duo that has the power to dominate lane as well as team fights. Finally, let's wrap it up with support. For this episode of Which Hook Champion is the Best, we're featuring Pyke. Although his laning doesn't match the strength of his counterparts in Nautilus and Thresh, he received some changes to his ultimate last patch that allowed for more skill expression. When failing executes, his ultimate deals half damage, but in return, he now receives 2 cuts on assists rather than 1. Pyke now has access to much more income as a result of this, and it also rewards him for handing over takedowns to his teammates. Overall, this means he's able to create a stronger economy across his entire team. More items means easier fights. It's that simple. Our last pick for this patch is Bard. Last patch, he received some buffs to his early game, which is really all he needed. Bard is a lane bully by design, so the extra tankiness allows him to play more aggressively and attempt to make plays early on. This is what hindered him previously. He was just too squishy to take risks. Without creating leads, other supports simply had more reliable ways of impacting the game. Now that he's received some of his early game power back, Bard players can rejoice and take advantage of his lane presence to create leads. There's a lot of things that come with playing Bard. During lane phase, make sure to use your passive empowered auto attacks to take favorable trades. If you have meeps near you, count it as a blessing. Use your mana to either trade or heal up, then pick them up to replenish the mana you spend. Anytime you push in waves, you can look to either poke your enemies with Q or walk out of lane to pick up chimes. Should they be on the way to the mid lane or enemy jungle, you can also look to commit to roams or deep ward while you're there. Practice makes perfect with Bard's ultimate. There's a plethora of uses for it. Make sure to understand the best way to use it, as this is what determines how much of an impact you'll have. Initiate with it, block telegraph damage like Karthus' ultimate, put turrets in stasis to start dives, split up fights, you get the point. Like any champion, think carefully about what you need to do, practice, and review your decisions afterwards. Alright, that concludes this episode of OP Pick or Ban. Thanks so much for watching, guys. If you want to follow me on social media, you can follow me at @DanielLammerman. And if you guys want more content to help you improve, check out ProGuides.com, where we've teamed up with pro players to create guides designed to take your game to the next level. Also, keep an eye out on our YouTube channel, where we're constantly updating it with new content just like this. So good luck out there on the Rift, and we'll see you all next time.